Do I have your permission to record, everyone?
Yes.
Thank you all. We're good to go.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I'd like to lead us in a short prayer, if you would join me. Gracious and holy God, we thank you for this opportunity to listen and to be heard. Thank you for leading us in truth and love. Be with us as we talk about the evolution that we are looking at. Change is kind of scary, God, so we ask that you be with us. Amen. All right. So, again, this is a listening session. Oh gosh, we lost somebody. Who did we lose? Somebody left already. What did I say? So if you have a question, or you want me to jump right in and go over something.
We should start by saying, is everybody aware? We actually have a banner at the top of the website right now, which takes you to a landing page for all this work and the 6 key documents we are using to try to explain this to everyone, which provides verbal information and visual information. And we haven't quite worked it into a musical number yet, but we might get there in the next couple of weeks. Are all there available for you to learn about what's going on, and people may have specific questions around them, so there may be times when you want to refer to those.
Who would like to start? Maybe you're not starting because you think that this is a presentation. I mean, folks, I'm a preacher. I can talk to y'all, but okay, Paige, I saw your hand.
I just wanted to thank the group for getting the webpage up. I thought the documents on the webpage were really helpful, well put together. I thought they had, a lot of great details there, that kind of laid out what this process looks like, and kind of where it's going. And so I wanted to sort of start by acknowledging that I thought the group did a great job of creating materials that were not impossible to wade through on the one side, and but detailed enough to feel like I know what I'm voting around. So thank you very much for that.
All right, thank you, Paige. And as Gordon pointed out, there's for those of you that are charts and graphs oriented, which is how I process, I love me a good chart. And there's a couple of really good charts that are available, and complete with ovals for the new configuration and rectangles for what we've been doing that's been working so well, and how it's all going to come together. And then if you're not a chart and graph kind of person, then there's several pages of words. Flag me down if you'd like to say something. Oh, go ahead, Paige, go ahead.
I did have a question as I looked at this. I wondered, it looks to me like, and I realize we're kind of a little bit keeping separate the association functions from the conference functions, but I wondered how clergy support on the conference side was going to interact with whichever COM relates to clergy support, and if it makes sense to continue to have like both sides of that.
That's a great question. Thank you. And I want to welcome Rebecca, who managed to get on. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, Steve, for helping us get that done. So we were just launching, Rebecca, And Paige had a question about the, if you can pull, if charts mean something to you, there's a chart with the squares, the rectangles on one side with the board of directors has duty. Oh, look at you, Gordon. Okay. All right. I had it backwards. The ovals, the ovals are the existing functions, the conference functions, and then the squares, the rectangles are the new proposed configuration. And Paige just brings up a really good point that there are places where the board of directors has local church support, and how are they going to interface with the Committee on Connection and Covenant? And that is a really good question. I can tell you that that's the first time I've kind of noticed that, so thank you. And I can tell you that as soon as I go back to the team, we'll have a conversation about how we think that might work, except then we're going to hear Gordon say, that's not our job to tell people how they're going to do this. Overarching, we want people to talk to each other. We want people to communicate. So that looks like a really logical place where this oval and that rectangle might have some things in common and work together on some things and maybe not. So thank you for that. Gordon, do you have a more articulate answer?
I don't know if it's more articulate, but it may be a little bit broader.
Okay.
In our first year of conversation around this was actually a question we asked ourselves a few times. Is essentially, is there duplication of things between what happens in the conference structure and the association structure? And there are places where they could be. And we are pretty clear as we live into this that we're going to try to limit duplication. In a pure form, one's really focused on authorization and one's focused on resourcing, but we don't really always live that way. So we're hoping that there's actually some interaction between the Committee on Ministry for Authorization and Clergy Support, between the Committee for Congregational Empowerment and local church support, so that some things can be done jointly as well as separately, which is hopefully one of the benefits of this. Is that's really hard to do when you're trying to communicate between 6 committees on ministry and these groups, 6 or 7 committees on ministry and these groups. Now it gives us a little more chance to do that interchange and see if there's some things that we can benefit by working together on.
Does anybody else have some input on that particular question before we go on to another? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paige. Does that help? Does that address what you were looking at? All right. And who might have our next question? Debbie.
A couple of days ago at a gathering similar but different to this, you had mentioned that there was a recent change based on somebody's input, somebody's input, and I'm wondering what that change was.
Gordon, could you bring up the chart again?
The one I just had up?
Yeah. Again, that's how I think best, is with charts and graphs. So as you look at this chart and you look over to the left side, we had the 4 committees on ministry. Notice the big change there in the acronym. COCM are becoming COMs per our manual on ministry. And and then the Committee on Connection and Covenant. And those association functions went directly to the board of directors. We were challenged about that does not perhaps provide enough communication between among the 5 committees, and that there needed to be a representative group where these 5 could talk to one another about whatever matter was necessary before bringing it right to the board of directors. When that was brought to us, it was brought to us under the umbrella of the board of directors only meets 5 times a year. And most of our COCMs meet monthly. So what if there's a scenario where something has to happen faster and communication has to happen faster? So we heard that, and with some hesitation, we added the council. The hesitation being it's not like our current executive committee. It is for communication. And does that make sense, Debbie? And Gordon, what would you like to add?
I would just say we had actually always talked about having meetings of the chairs to discuss stuff. We just hadn't, because we saw that as a communication thing and not a governance thing, we hadn't represented this on the chart. And what we learned is, oh, we really need to help people see that we intend that to be where that happens. And so it was more trying to draw a graphic representation of what we had intended than a total complete change.
Right. And Gordon just verbalized what I said. It's not an executive committee, does not have power. It's about communication. Okay. All right, and let's go back. Who might have a question? Oh, yes, Rhonda, hi. You're muted. You're still muted. You can't be unmuted? Oh, that's so sad.
There we go.
Yay!
Yay. I'm doing this on a phone. I normally do it on a computer, but
Yep.
hey. So I don't have any problem with the structure. What I'm wondering is if you've got someone way up north, there used to be an association that pastor or people from the church could go to. Now it's all going to be where? Concord? I mean, like, where are these committees going to be meeting? I'm assuming the conference office.
We imagine most all of these meetings will happen virtually, as they do
Oh,
now.
okay.
Only one of our committees on ministry currently meets in person, and that's for only half the year. So
Oh,
we
wow.
haven't really imagined that would change, that most of these, I mean, there might occasionally be in-person meetings. There are times when our current oversight committee, which is going to become the Committee for Oversight and Accountability, does meet in person, but most of our meetings happen virtually. We imagine that would still happen that way.
Okay, so
And we did hear, I heard that there are some limitations in the North Country when it comes to connectivity.
yeah.
Well, that is something that we will need to address And we will try to address that. And to be sure that somehow they find a neighbor who has that ability to plug them in, so that they may have to drive to a Zoom meeting, but they won't miss out on, and I'm making this up.
Okay.
Because we can't decide for the people. We're presenting this boat for people to board and then decide who sits in front and who sits upstairs, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Craig,
mean,
I
A
saw
lot of
your
our,
head.
a lot of our congregants are older, and I mean, I'm pretty up on tech and I had trouble unmuting. So that's my, my concern about virtual stuff.
We know, and we know that even now, some of our churches have to help our members
Yeah.
with tech, tech help, assistance. We'll do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
We'll do what
Well,
we need to
cool.
do. Craig, I saw you. Are you concerned about that as well?
Am I concerned about connectivity?
Yeah.
No, Ringe, every address that wants it has fiber connections to the internet. It's
Ooh, okay.
part of a project I worked on the Teletech committee. So anybody in Ringe who wants it can have a fiber connection up to 1 gig not asynchronous, but synchronous. There are some people who are still using DSL, but they're in the minority at this point in time. And over the course of the next couple of months, year or so, Consolidated is going to move them to a fiber-based connection.
Okay. All right. So it's improving all the time.
But I'm sorry, I was just remembering though, up in the White Mountains, the discussion we had with one of the ministers up there saying that she particularly just did not have what she needed to make effective connections to the internet.
Yeah.
And that one of the earliest discussions we had about this whole process.
Gotcha. Yeah. For me, again, that committee on connection and communication, I think they're going to be pretty busy touching base with all of the churches to make sure that connection can happen. And if we're going to have meetings and gatherings on Zoom and whatnot, offer things online, that what are their resources if they can't get on? So that is going to be on the list for sure.
So Deborah, Jeannie, would you just spend some time giving an overview? Our church at this point is very small. We have no representation within yes, I go to the meetings, but we're not that involved. If I'm going to present this to my congregation, to let them know what's going on, I wonder if you might, particularly with the right side of this chart that I happen to have in front of me, all the ovals.
Yes, that's currently what, thank you, Gordon. That's currently what's handled by the board of directors.
And that's going away?
No, oh no.
Okay,
No.
so all of the oval things will continue to be
Absolutely.
have people on them
Yes,
and be handled by the board of the directors.
right.
And the association will have the COM plus the Committee for Connection and Covenant, and they will also any decision-making going to the board of directors.
The decision-making does not go to the board of directors. They
Goes
make
to the council.
they make their decision within their body,
Okay,
which is what currently happens.
right.
Except it currently happens 7 times in
Right.
7 different associations.
And how does that then get transferred to local churches? Those decisions.
In this, and I'm sorry, which association are you in?
Southwest.
Southwest.
How does that get transferred? How, for example, if the Committee on Ministry and Ministerial Discernment has something that our little church should know about, how's that going to get to the church?
How does it happen now?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, when I go to a Southwest Association meeting,
Right.
I
So-
certainly hear that, but
We
The
will
committee would
continue to-
articulate to you.
I'm sorry, Craig?
The committee that we have that currently exists, the COCM, would articulate to your church, Jeannie.
if it pertained to our church,
Yes, they would articulate that to you.
okay, so it would not be what's going on with all those committees, if it didn't pertain to our church, would not come to our church.
I'll let Gordon or someone else answer that question. But the reality is, what we're doing, as you know, we're taking away the Southwest Association
Exactly.
COCM, and we're having this group of COCMs,
Right.
and they would articulate to you, as I understand the process, if there was a need or a concern that they had, they would articulate to you and your church.
Mhm.
Okay. And that would be true of all those COCMs.
Correct.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
All those
Correct. So-
COMs.
You will hear me use, Jeannie, a lot the phrase we imagine,
We-
because the truth is, until we have people on these committees populating them, they're going to self-determine on how they're going to do some of this work.
Okay.
So we can only kind of imagine how this would get handled. We imagine our committees on ministry will communicate much in the same way they do now. So if you have an authorized minister transferring standing because you've just called a new pastor, if you have a member in discernment engaged, we imagine they will be communicating directly with church leadership much in the same way they would do now. As far as the overall thing, one of the things that happens with this is going to conference acting as association. It means we have conference resources to communicate things. So I imagine there will be, well, I don't have to imagine this one, I get to decide. There will be a section of the weekly news that'll be about association stuff as it needs, and that will be included in there because I can make that happen.
Perfect.
There'll be a section of the conference annual meeting that will be the association annual meeting. That's where some of that will get communicated as well.
So that local churches who get the newsletter weekly will know a little bit about what's going on.
Yes,
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Who has a question or concern they'd like to share? Karen?
The thoughts come into my mind. It's actually not a question or a concern. It's a comment about the last conversation that I think it's going to improve some of the communication to some of these churches that right now, some churches don't even know what an association is, but hopefully they'll get to learn through the weekly newsletter a little more about it and through people, signing up for that and then bringing it to the church. So I'm hoping it'll even get better.
Me too. I imagine that. Thank you. Someone
You all in
else?
this conversation have put a new imagining in my head, which is one of the conversations the council can have is what little piece of education on the work of association are we going to throw in the weekly news on a
Right.
monthly or bi-monthly
Right.
basis so that we can kind of help educate about what the work of associations are.
Yeah. Rebecca, I see your hand.
Thanks. I think I asked this a couple months ago and I wondered if there was any more conversation, or I think I was trying to understand where the 7% came in of, I think for a quorum for an ecclesiastical council in the, new one association. And I wondered how many churches that might translate to and how that thinking came to be.
I'll let you take this one, Gordon.
Yeah, I'm doing some quick math, so stall for a moment.
It was mathematical. We spent, I don't know how many minutes trying to figure out, well, how many churches and what does each association do now? We looked at the quorums for every association, and then we looked at our model, Minnesota, and they had a quorum, and how many churches did they have? So it was a lot of math. Go for it.
So, yes, the answer based on where we are at the moment, well, if we allowed ourselves to assume for a moment that all 7 associations become a part of this, then we would be bringing 100 and what I suspect at that point, because we're about to lose a church, 131 churches into this piece. 7% of that would mean 10 churches would comprise a quorum at an ecclesiastical council. One of the things you will read about, I believe this is in our frequently asked questions, not in the other document, that we imagine one of the things that the Committee on Connection will do is help establish some clusters that will not be based around our current association, but will be ones that have some geographic things, so we can get extra communication out to those to try to help get churches there. But that quorum can be any of the, if it's all 7 associations, 131 churches. We just need somebody representing 10 of them to make quorum. And it was just a lot of dialogue, and frankly, it was a lot of listening at our April, May sessions about what's realistic in order to hit a quorum number.
And I have a follow-up, which I couldn't link to the documents tonight, so I didn't get to look at it. How many delegates will churches have, and how will that work? Now, will they still have delegates for the one association and delegates for the state conference? I think I missed that in the documents.
You would have missed it because it's not in the documents. That is not a decision that's fully articulated yet. One of the things we do say in there is in the first 18 months of this new association, there will be the development of bylaws for the association. And that'll be a question that gets answered as part of that process. We imagine at this time that the association annual meeting and the conference annual meeting are happening at the same time, because it's about the only way we can afford to do gatherings that large. So most likely it'll be some piece of common delegates for the 2 gatherings because they'll happen at the same time. But we haven't worked out all the details on that. Deborah, do you have any more thoughts on that?
No. That was good. Rebecca, you good now? Good, okay. Dawn, I see your hand.
This just actually jumps off of what Rebecca was asking, and I apologize, I'm fairly new to the area, and so I don't know how you've done it before. And given what I'm hearing and experience about distance for an ecclesiastical council and quorum, do you, or annual meetings even, do you allow a hybrid opportunity for people at all?
Since COVID, yes. Oh, it depends on the association now, right? So I can speak to what happened in the Rockingham Association at our last ecclesiastical council, where in the Rockingham, we have 22 churches, and Deb Glein-Allen, who's on the call, had her ecclesiastical council. And we had 5 churches represented out of 22, which was not quorum. So, yes, I took a time out, told the kitchen ladies to serve coffee, and called the pastors all up with their phones and said, call somebody. We need more churches, we need more representation. And they were able to Zoom in so that we could have Deb's EC in time. So yeah, hybrid is definitely going part of our future. I mean, it's our present, right? Look at us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If it isn't in the works, it should be considered.
Yeah. Always being mindful to those who can't get online. Yeah.
There's two words that we've used a lot as our goals in this process. One is capacity, been a big driver for us, and the other's been consistency. And this is a place where our hope is for some consistency, because we have some associations that have done this and some that haven't. Ultimately, the Committee on Ministry and Discernment will have to decide the decisions on how they want to do their ecclesiastical councils. And we would share with them lots of experience about why the hybrid option is beneficial.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We just had Tracy Mays recently, and that included 2 associations, and that baby was packed online and packed in the room, and incredibly well represented. So it can work both ways.
Yeah.
That way.
Well, Deb's ordination was packed. Okay, do we have another question out there? Or concern or wondering?
Can I ask a question of everybody else?
Sure.
Do you all know when your association meetings are when you will be considering this?
Rockingham, I hope you know. It's been announced, October 6th. I see 5 of us from Rockingham.
According to my last conversation with Larry Brickner-Wood, the Carol Stratford, it's not set. So if you know something different, let me know. I'll put it on my calendar.
That is correct. It is not,
That-
as far as I know, it is not set as well.
Right.
For Carol Stratford. I do not believe Hillsborough is yet set. Merrimack is meeting the same day as Rockingham on October 6th. Friends in Southwest Association, my understanding is your meeting is on November 3rd. We don't have anyone from North Country, but in case you bump into somebody, that'll be November 10th. And Grafton Orange Sullivan will be November 17th. Carol Stratford and Hillsborough, we will let you know. We are trying to twist arms so that everybody can know with good notice.
I would kind of like to share an anecdote, if that's all right with everybody. I don't see a burning question yet. So I'm an enthusiastic supporter of this process. Not gonna lie. And my best friend says, Deborah, you're the only person I know that likes change. What is wrong with you? So, as an enthusiastic supporter of how we're going to make this work, and also as a witness to what happened to Deb Glein-Allen, if we didn't have Zoom capability, she may not be reverend today. I mean, because things happen so slowly. So, having witnessed that, I became more enthusiastic. And I made the statement recently, I don't know what people are worried about. Nothing is going to be lost. And the lovely individual with whom I was speaking said, you can't say that because we are losing something. And I was struck by the integrity of that statement. This is a change, and change means we're losing what we used to do. And I now am very sensitive to the fact that there are people who will be grieving. I've only been in the New Hampshire Conference for 10 years, and that gives me a certain kind of sight. Many of you have lived your whole lives, and that gives you years and years and years of your association connection. So I will no longer say there won't be anything lost, because I get it. The conversations that we've had in our task force have said that we want to invite the current associations to minister to those feelings. And that we invite folks to have services, a ritual of moving forward, a ritual of what are the gifts that, I'll just say Rockingham because that's where I am. What are the gifts that Rockingham Association gave me that I can carry forever and that I can carry in my memory? You know, a wandering Aramaean was my ancestor. So we are going to encourage people to listen to the loss and to grieve it in an appropriate way. And that could look 7 different ways, right? As we move forward to a Granite State Association, if your association chooses to come forward to the Granite State Association. I wanted to say that. I'm very appreciative. I can get excited.
Well, I can't speak for the Southwest Association, but over the 45 years I've lived here in Ringe, I have seen a monumental change in interest, number one, and number two, in participation numbers. I can almost tell you everybody who will be at an association meeting.
Yeah.
The participation, and we have one church that petitioned to leave the association they were in and join us, and they've never made a meeting.
Oh.
And this is part of the problem. I see this, I'm the president or the officer in charge of the Ringe veterans. We can't get people to join us.
Yeah.
Most of us are Vietnam or Vietnam era veterans like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to have a meeting next week to bring more people in, but I know it's not going to work. The same thing is true in our church. It just, people are not interested in what we have to offer at this point in time.
It's
and we're
changing.
all legacy members.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in Connecticut. Connecticut got rid of their county governments many, many years ago, and it simplified the process. But again, I've been here 45 years and I've watched what's going on here. And the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, just is where we're at. Something has to change. But you're right. Those that are going to be upset about it, we need to be sympathetic to their thinking. But I don't see a great upwelling of this is the worst decision you've ever made. I really don't.
Okay. Okay.
I would just tag the asterisk on what Deborah said to say one of the things the committee's turning its attention to, the task force is turning its attention to now is also trying to develop a few liturgical resources that can be used at association gatherings in the next 6 months to kind of help doing the grieving and letting go that is part of the real feelings that are part of this process.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. I was going to say just about this, almost the same thing about, 3 decades in Rockingham Association. It's different and it's not feasible anymore to function in the way we used to.
Mm-hmm. Just for brain fodder, Gordon, what are the numbers? How many elected positions currently to what were the new model?
I don't have that right in front of me. I am reasonably confident it's 107 to 52.
Yeah, that's it.
But
it
is, if that's not exactly accurate, it's close.
Yeah. So, and I don't know about you, but our executive committee is not full. We have vacancies on our slate. So yes, everything that you just said, Craig. All right. Yes, Rebecca.
So my next question, I think, is about the nominating committee, and I wonder how that's going to work and how much input they're going to get from conference staff, because that's quite a different thing as having a nominating committee for kind of your geographical area and your association versus a nominating committee for the one association that was 6 or 7 associations. So I wondered how the conversation was about that and how much input conference staff will give it, or perhaps chairs of some of the committees now, like the chair of the UMMT or the chair of the oversight committee. So
Gordon?
The answer is all of that, Rebecca. At the current moment, we are trying to select and bring to the board of directors the folks to serve on that nominating committee. Our hope is the board of directors will appoint that nominating committee at its November 3rd meeting, and that committee will make the rest of the nominations in the December, January, February timeframe. So we have a full slate of people to start April 1st for the associations that do. Can't start it much earlier than December because we don't know all of which associations will be a part of it. That's part of the challenge of timing. But yes, there's certainly, we want to have some carryover from current committees on ministry and such to begin, because we need that continuity of history to kind of help bridge things that are ongoing. And so there'll be some of that that'll be checked in. Obviously, the UMMT going to the committee on discernment, there'll be a lot of crosstalk between the nominating committee and that, and making that happen. And that committee will fulfill its charge to make sure at the same time we do all of that set of stuff, to make sure that we do meet our diversity requirements of folks from different geography and gender and gender expression and clergy and lay and all of those things. So it's going to be a significant task. And they would welcome your prayers. And yes, our staff will help staff that nominating committee, as we will all the association committees, as we currently do.
and will the committees get dissolved? Like, will the UMMT get dissolved on March 30th?
That's a really good question that we have not actually talked about, but technically I guess the answer is yes, because UMMT is a unified committee of associations, and there will if all the associations vote this, there will no longer be associations to make a unified committee. In reality, it's going to morph into the Committee on Discernment.
Right.
But in technicality, yes, if all associations do. What in the world happens if we have 5 associations vote in and 2 not? Is there still a UMT? We'll have to figure that out as that happens. We haven't wrapped our head around that type of one.
Right. Thank you. Thanks for your question. How are we doing? There's a couple of you that haven't spoken up yet. This is a listening session. Maybe you just came to listen. Okay, Lynn, thank you. Anybody?
Well, Deborah, I can tell you that as the chair of the UMMT, we are going to be receiving a bunch of you to our next meeting next week. So
Yes.
I do have a whole bunch of UMMT specific questions for this process. Rebecca leaned into a couple of them today, but we'll have a bunch of you with our entire team next Tuesday. So I'm going to save those for them. Not that they're not interesting, but I'm not sure everybody needs to get down into the weeds with us. So I'm just glad to hear.
Good. Thank you. Thanks for being here. All right. I don't know that we need to just stay on. Gordon, do you have any last words?
I would only repeat what I just said is, particularly in this season, as we head into associations engaging in discernment in just a couple of weeks, we appreciate everyone's prayer that discernment is faithful in all ways, regardless of the outcomes. That's really what this time is about, so.
Amen. All right. Thank you so much for being here, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you, and for all the work that you've done.
Thank you. Gordon, I have a question.
Give me just one moment.